Welcome to my kitchen. Today's recipe is a special one. This is one of Mom's favorites, lemon blueberry muffins. It's simply delicious and it's very easy to bring together. Okay, we're going to start with the dry ingredients. We're going to take some flour. And we'll measure our flour out. And that's 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Nothing fancy. Get that in the bowl. We're going to put all our dry ingredients in this bowl. I'm going to give it a good whisk. Like I said, I'm just using the plain all-purpose flour. I use the unbleached. It's just a little bit healthier. And then next, we're going to measure out some salt. And I'm just going to grab it from the salt shaker. I'll take the top off. One less thing on the counter. And that's a half a teaspoon of salt. And next is the baking soda. And that's a teaspoon of baking soda. And then the baking powder. And then I have a little addition to this recipe, and that's nutmeg. Just a little bit. Nutmeg goes really well with lemon and blueberries. So that's about a half a teaspoon of nutmeg. And like I said, we're going to give it a good whisk, get everything mixed up, get it nice, light, and fluffy. This step takes place of the step of having to sift your flour. Instead of putting the flour through a sifter, I use the whisk. You just want to try to get lots of air in it. And then we'll move on to the next bowl, which is a bigger bowl, because this is the bowl that's going to have most of the mixing done in it. And we're going to start off with our sugar. And there's not a lot of sugar in this recipe, which is nice. There's only 1/3 cup of sugar. And it's just regular white granulated sugar. And next, we're going to put the lemon zest in with the sugar. I'm going to use the rasp. Remember not to push down too hard, and try to turn the lemon while you're running it down the rasp. It'll help get just the yellow part and not the white. The yellow part is where all the flavor is. That's where the oil is. And that's where the flavor lives. Okay, now technically this recipe, the original recipe called for buttermilk. It's not something I buy all the time. So you can make your own buttermilk, which I find is easier to do. So it's a cup of milk, and you pour the milk just below the cup mark. So you have a little bit of room for the lemon juice, and you put lemon juice in there. Anywhere's from 2 to 3 tablespoons. I like the 3 tablespoons because it gives you more of a lemon flavor. I'm just going to squeeze the lemons over a strainer so we don't get any seeds in there. And you should have this measure to the full cup by the time you're done. You can go a little bit over, but try not to do too much over that. And then you want to give it a good stir. And as you're stirring it, you will see it starts to thicken. And it will look just like buttermilk. You can also make your buttermilk with vinegar too, instead of the lemon juice. But since this recipe, you want the lemon flavor in there, I chose to use the lemon juice. If you want to use buttermilk, if you have it and you want to use it, you can do that. But I would still add the lemon juice to the wet ingredients to give you that extra lemon flavor. Then we're going to add the butter. And that's 1/4 cup of melted butter. And we have eggs. And that's 2 eggs. And you're going to want to break up the eggs and mix that with the sugar really well. Try to get a little lightness in there. You want the eggs broken up really well and mixed up with the sugar. And then we're going to add our buttermilk. Make sure that gets well incorporated. And now we're going to add the dry ingredients to our wet ingredients. And here's where you want to be a little careful. You don't want to go crazy beating it. You want to be gentle with this batter. And take your time and sort of, it's more of a folding action than it is a beating it together. That's why I prefer to do this by hand and not with the mixer. You want to keep everything at this point nice and gentle. And right at the point before it's completely mixed all the way, you want to add the blueberries. And then that way you're not mixing too much. Now I'm using frozen blueberries today. You can use fresh ones if you want. But I have some frozen ones that I wanted to use up. And like I said, gentle, gentle. Give it a nice fold. No beating at this point. And I find if you use the frozen blueberries, they have a tendency to stay where they are. They don't sink in your muffins. Sometimes the fresh ones will sink down to the bottom of the muffin. And we're going to use muffin pans without liners. The liners don't work too well on this. It sticks to the muffin more than it works. They really don't work with this. So I decided to use vegetable shortening to grease the pan. I prefer using vegetable shortening because it doesn't leave a residue on the muffin tins. Sometimes this spray can leave that sticky residue after you use it a few times. So I just use plain old vegetable shortening. Want to make sure that you get them evenly coated. You don't have to go crazy with it. If you wanted to put some flour in there too, you could flour them also. And at this point, if you want to, you can turn your oven on and turn it on to 400 degrees. That way it'll be ready when you're ready to put the pans in the oven. And these are special muffin tins. These are Mom's muffin tins. So it's very appropriate. Now, I don't use a scoop or any kind of measuring cup to measure these out because, like I said, you want to be very gentle with this dough at this point. So I just scoop it up with the spatula and fill it in. I just use my eye to see how much I'm putting in there. Takes a little practice, but once you do it a few times, it gets easier. This can make anywhere from 10 to 12 muffins, depending on how big you like your muffins. And we're just going to take our time, go slow. Remember, you're having fun in the kitchen. Now this, I ended up with 11 muffins. So there's 1 cup that's empty. So there's a little trick that if you pour a little bit of water in there, when the tins are in the oven, it stops them from warping. It stops your tins from getting twisted or bent. So that's a handy trick. I also put the tins on a cookie sheet. It makes it easier to get them in and out of the oven, but it also, if anything were to spill over when it's cooking, it goes on the cookie sheet and not in your oven. Just divide that last little bit up. And we'll get them in the oven, and they're cook anywhere between 20 and 25 minutes. Depending on your oven. These stayed in for 23 minutes, and that was a perfect amount of time for them. Take them out, and then you want them to cool off. You really want to let them cool off at least 15 minutes, because if you try to take them out of the pan before that, they will crumble if they're not cool enough. And these do take a little work to get out of the pan. And take the knife and run it around the edge. And then take, every so often, sort of pry up the bottom a little bit. Like I said, just take your time. And when I was taking them out, they were I probably even could have waited a little bit longer, truthfully. So I turn them upside down so their steam is coming off of the bottom of them, and then that way they don't get soggy at all. And take them out and let them sit on the cooling rack. If you wanted to make these a little bit sweeter and use them for dessert, you could put a glaze on top of them. And that would be just like a little bit of powdered sugar and some more lemon juice. You could use milk, but if you want that lemon flavor, I would definitely use the lemon juice. Probably like a half a cup of powdered sugar and maybe a tablespoon of lemon juice. And stir it up just to the point where it's nice and runny. And then when your muffins are completely cooled, turn them over and you can just drizzle it on the top of them. These muffins have a nice simple flavor. They're not complicated. Like I said, they come together very easy. You can store them in a plastic container on the counter for a couple of days. You can put the container in the refrigerator. They last longer in the refrigerator. And then you can even put them in the freezer. They're great in the freezer. Then you take them out and you microwave them for about 15 seconds to defrost them. And then you can have a good muffin anytime you want them. These muffins are nice because they're not like a cake muffin. They're more like a softer scone. And like I said, they're not super sweet. So they're nice to have with a cup of coffee, cup of tea. This time of year, iced tea. And this doesn't take long to get together. Like I said, it only took about maybe 15 minutes to get everything mixed up. Say 5 minutes to get everything out and measured. If you wanted to, you could also substitute the blueberries for a different kind of fruit. Strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, even peaches might be nice. You can give it a try. Let me know how that works out. It sounds like a good idea. Once they're all cooled, you can get them in a plastic container. Don't put them in too soon because they will steam if they're not cool enough. I hope you give this recipe a try. And if you have any questions, let me know. Love you, Mom. Thanks for watching. See you next recipe.